very much. Hi, everyone. My name's Dr. Kat Bruce, and I'm the founder of NatureMetrics, the world's leading environmental DNA company. We're bringing a revolution in biodiversity data. Now, when I first set up NatureMetrics 6 years ago, I went to a sustainability conference. And when I told people I worked on biodiversity, they looked kind of confused. And they asked what on earth nature had to do with sustainability. Well, today, nature's center stage. And at COP26, the world recognized our only chance of keeping global temperature rise within 1.5 degrees is by protecting and restoring nature at unprecedented scales. And as a result, business and finance is getting serious about biodiversity. Every day, new companies are committing to become nature positive, both recognizing the materiality of nature for their business and in anticipation of increasing regulatory and finance drivers down the line. But there's a problem. No one really knows what it means to be nature positive, let alone how to achieve it or judge success. Because biodiversity has a measurement problem. Now think about carbon. Carbon's just one molecule, and it's the same everywhere in the world. Biodiversity is all life on Earth. It's incredibly complex. Every ecosystem is made up of thousands of species which are interacting, and in each place you've got different species. And so the tools we've been using up until now to gather data on biodiversity, our binoculars and microscopes and nets, are just not up to the challenge that we face. We have nothing like the data that we need to enable meaningful targets and thresholds to be set, and for progress in meeting them to be measured. But in recent years, a new tool has emerged, which is a total game changer for measuring biodiversity at scale. All species leave traces of DNA in the environment, and they accumulate in water. So our rivers, lakes, and oceans become like soups of genetic material of all of the species that live in and around them. And at NatureMetrics, we use those traces of DNA to deliver biodiversity data at scales that haven't been possible before. So whereas before we used to have to send big teams of experts into each place to do surveys, now, capturing these traces of environmental DNA is so easy that a 10-year-old can do it. All you have to do is push water through a fine filter using a large syringe. The traces of DNA get stuck inside the filter unit, and that's sent to our state-of-the-art laboratories for analysis, where we do the complicated bit. We sequence the DNA and identify the species, and we can do that centrally and at scale. So now we've got something that we can put in the hands of people all over the world to gather standardized biodiversity data across the tree of life, from bacteria to blue whales. We've never had that before. Let me give you an example of why it's so transformative. And this is the sort of thing that can be rolled out right across the world, including in places like the Okavango Delta, where we're already talking to partners. But Fauna and Flora International trained up local national park guides and local community assistants in Liberia to collect eDNA samples to see if they could confirm local reports of pygmy hippos, which are super rare and endangered. Not only did our analysis confirm the pygmy hippos, but it also gave data for no extra cost on 160 other species of vertebrates. Those included things like rare and endangered monkeys, antelopes, as well as a critically endangered fish species that could now trigger a new protected area. And we could go further. From those same samples we've now got in our lab, we could generate data on the bacterial communities or the invertebrates and start linking that to things like water quality and pollution. Because we can now generate enough data to be able to apply big data analytics, which is vital because biodiversity is a classic big data problem. It's big and messy and complex, but there is predictable signal within that noise that can tell us when ecosystems are starting to break down. But if we look just species by species, we're not going to see those signals until it's too late. Just like how we missed the catastrophic decline in insect populations until all of a sudden we woke up and realized we don't have to spend our summers wiping insects off our car windscreens anymore. By that point, the losses were about 75%. But now that environmental DNA lets us turn nature into data at sufficient scales, we can use machine learning and other AI techniques to create really simple metrics that are driven by the complex data. So the models developed by our data scientists now let us describe an ecosystem with a single number, which can be averaged over multiple sites and tracked over time to quantify impact and restoration. So today, we address a multi-billion-dollar market across 6 core sectors who have a need for on-the-ground biodiversity data for environmental impact assessment or for informing conservation and management. We provide a whole end-to-end solution for our clients, from providing simple-to-use sampling kits through laboratory analysis and data processing. It's cheaper than the alternatives. It's less risky for our clients, staff, and contractors, and it gives them vastly more data to underpin robust decision-making. And while it's taken a few years for the industry to gain confidence in a new tool, we're now starting to see rapid adoption across all of these sectors. For instance, Anglo American tried out eDNA at one mine site in South Africa last year. When they got their results back, they told us, "I cannot describe to you or put into words the value of this data in a monetary sense. It has confirmed so much of what we thought was happening on site, but couldn't prove until now." They've then rolled it out across mines, across 10 different business units around the world, in landscapes ranging from tropical forests, high mountains, deserts, and coastlines. And it's not just Anglo American. We've now provided data for over 400 different companies, working in 60 different countries around the world, and that's growing all the time. Our team's growing as well. It's more than doubled this year to 87 staff. That's partly through a £6.5 million Series A that we did at the beginning of this year. And that let us invest heavily in our commercial teams, which is now being reflected in our revenues. So we made £1 million in 2020 and are on track to almost triple that this year, with £8 million of revenues forecast next year, just from our core markets alone. But we want to go beyond that now and start addressing some of the new users of biodiversity data. So increasingly, information needs to be aggregated across sites and summarized at the company or portfolio level. That information then needs to be able to flow upstream to investors through ESG metrics, and also downstream through supply chains to consumers making ethical purchasing decisions. So to enable this, we're building the database of life. This is a scalable, versatile digital platform where we can store, curate, aggregate, and interrogate our data, combine it with other environmental data layers, and make it available in a range of formats through customer-facing dashboards. This will establish NatureMetrics as the leading provider of global nature intelligence data. It'll open up new business models associated with digital services and commercial data sales. And we've already built the back end of this system and are going to be user testing the first customer dashboards in January. We've built the team that we need to support the next stage of our growth. So Katie Critchlow joined us last year as CEO. She's an experienced green technology business leader with a background in sustainable finance and supply chains. That's freed me up to be able to do what I'm best at, which is engaging with policymakers to raise awareness of new technologies and to make sure in this emerging global policy framework for biodiversity that there is a real ambition for better metrics on nature. We've also taken on Jessica Douglas as our Chief Digital Officer, who joined us from IBM, where she was an executive partner and head of blockchain. And Ewan Murray was previously CEO at the Sustainability Consortium, and he's joined us as Commercial Director. So what's next for us? Well, we want to invest in accelerating the development of our digital nature intelligence products through the database of life. We want to expand our lab business internationally. And then we're looking at doing some large-scale strategic data acquisition. If you'd like to join us on this journey, we'll be raising a Series B later next year. And we're looking to start conversations with potential investors at this point. We've got less than a decade to fundamentally transform our relationship with nature. And there's finally serious momentum to do that. But the risk of greenwashing is very, very real. And we can only manage what we can measure. NatureMetrics is making biodiversity measurable. Thank you.